I want to think about what step you would do first. And I've given you a multiple choice question here, so you can just pick the one that you think comes first. And so here's our distribution of answers at the time that I started. And it looks like we have either multiplying every term of the equation by 9 or taking the square root of both sides as our first step. And I will say this. The two steps that are reasonable, remember when we do order of operations, we would have to execute that square before I could do any addition or subtraction, right? So if I was going to expand this out, I would need to deal with that square first. But when we're solving equations, we want to undo all of the operations that have happened to x. That means that I want to isolate this w with all my heart. All I want is that w by itself on one side of the equal sign. So when I have a radical like this, or when I have an exponent like this, the same way that up here, I would I would want to isolate my radical expression so that I could get rid of that square root. I'm going to kind of do the same thing in this example. I'm going to get rid of the square using square root on both sides of the equal sign. When I take the square root in an equation, the side that does not have a variable needs to get a plus or a minus. So square cancels square root. So the square root of w plus 7/3 squared is just w plus 7/3. On the right, I get plus or minus square root of 10 over 9. That means that it could equal two different answers, either a positive or a negative. But the last thing I need to do to isolate w is just to subtract off 7/3. And there's a few different ways that I could go about this. I'm going to go ahead and write it right now with subtraction, but then I'll talk about a couple different ways we could simplify. So Lumen is going to want you to write your answers as simplified fractions. This is not a simplified fraction. However, with plus or minus, there's two ways we could go. That means that w could either equal negative 7/3 plus square root of 10 over square root of 9. I don't know if you remember your properties for radicals, but I can break up a radical around a fraction or around multiplication. Or w would equal negative 7/3 minus square root of 10 over square root of 9. I wrote it like this because square root of 9 is equal to 3. So this could be written as either w equals negative 7/3 plus square root of 10 over 3, or negative 7/3 minus square root of 10 over 3. When you're writing answers on Lumen, it'll want your plus and minus answers written as a list separated by a comma. And this is a perfectly complete answer. Alternatively, you could do negative 7 plus square root of 10 over the common denominator of 3, or negative 7 minus square root of 10 over the common denominator of 3. This is the simplest form because each is written as a single answer. I could convert square root of 10 into a decimal and get a decimal approximation for the positive and negative sides, but Lumen is going to prefer the simplest form answer. So I am always trying to isolate my linear term. That means a single w without any exponents in it, and without any radicals, just a single w. How I do that is going to change based on the type of problem that I have. When I have a radical or a perfect square, I want to try to eliminate that square or that radical so I can get just to the single w.